The modern consensus on the origin of the universe relies on a simple premise. Everything began with a singular, explosive event, expanding outward into a vast, empty vacuum. Since the widespread adoption of Albert Einstein's theories of relativity, physics has treated this space as a true void, a mathematical backdrop with no absolute reference frame of its own. We have built a century of mechanics on that assumption. But if that premise about the absolute emptiness of space is incorrect, the mathematical architecture of physics loses its foundation. Engineer and physicist Erwin Alf Lieberg proposes an alternative framework. In his model, the universe has an infinite age, possesses no physical boundaries, and operates on a strict, unbreakable zero-net energy balance. To balance his equations, Lieberg rejects the vacuum completely. Space, in this model, is a densely packed physical medium, built from interlocking structural units he calls ether granules. To see how a universe like this functions, we will construct this hypothetical environment entirely from first principles. We will trace the spontaneous emergence of standing waves in an empty void, pack them into a rigid spatial lattice, and physically redefine the constants of matter and electricity. By altering the single premise that space is empty, we are forced into a complete mechanical recalculation of gravity, the nature of electric charge, and the physical properties of the vacuum. The model begins in what Lieberg terms virgin space. This is a true infinite void, devoid of physical laws, matter, or any metric of time. The immediate conceptual hurdle is structural. How can a universe generate immense gradients of energy while maintaining an absolute net zero energy state? The solution lies in the spontaneous emergence of energy as three-dimensional waves, arising purely at random within the void. This diagram illustrates a foundational structure, a three-dimensional spiral wave moving through time. If a second identical wave emerges out of phase, they perfectly counter-rotate. Their projections flatline, canceling each other out. Despite this perfect mathematical cancellation, the raw kinetic energy of both waves remains present in the void. It is simply hidden by the precise symmetry of their opposition. In a lawless void lacking reference points, these nullified wave pairs propagate in all directions at unlimited speed, forming a chaotic sea of invisible energy. Over infinite time, statistical probability dictates the paths of different wave pairs will eventually cross. When these independent paths intersect, the collision disrupts their perfect phase cancellation. The opposing partners separate, unmasking their dormant crests and troughs. Once unmasked, the void loses its perfect uniformity. Space is no longer isotropic. It develops areas of concentrated wave amplitude alongside areas of localized deficit. These localized disruptions represent the universe's first physical density gradients. Out of absolute nothingness, the uneven distribution of waves creates potential energy and mechanical force. But chaotic wave collisions do not immediately yield a structured universe. This raw potential energy must find a way to take a permanent physical shape. As energy pulls away from surrounding deficits, these gradients form shallow potential wells. These wells trap the intersecting energies, causing them to reflect back on themselves and form open-ended standing waves. Lieberg defines these trapped standing waves as ether granules. They are massless, non-material units oscillating continuously to balance the energy gradients in their immediate environment. Balancing competing forces, an individual granule takes the form of a three-dimensional shape pulsating like a bellows, but in isolation, it is highly fragile. If a rogue wave crosses its path, it violently destabilizes and collapses instantly back into the void. To survive the chaotic sea of energy, these granules must multiply, fill the available volume, and physically brace against one another. They achieve stability through hexagonal closest packing, the densest possible geometric configuration for identical objects. Utilizing 74, applying force to a single mass means attempting to displace a granule out of alignment, requiring you to overcome the collective resistance of the entire universe. If the entirety of space is filled by a dense grid of locked granules, we have to account for the existence of physical matter. This framework treats matter as a series of resonance patterns within the lattice, rather than as objects occupying a void. Every particle of matter functions as a localized, closed standing wave vibrating within the dense ether grid. To maintain absolute stability, these standing waves fold in on themselves, stretching into a torus shape. Charge is redefined as a literal mass flow rate, measured in kilograms per second as ether cycles continuously through the particle's central orifice. To prove this fluid dynamic behavior mathematically, Liebig's framework aggressively reinterprets standard electrostatic equations. The baseline for measuring interactions between charged particles is the Coulomb force equation, which relies on Coulomb's constant to scale the electrostatic force. This shift in units is a mechanical necessity. If electric charge is a mass flow of kilograms per second, then for the force equation to balance, the constant Ke must represent the physical density of the medium. Consequently, Liebig maps the constant directly to the physical mass density of the spatial ether, shifting the value of 8.987 times 10 to the ninth from an abstract scaling factor to a literal measurement of ether mass per cubic meter. This assigns space itself a literal mass equivalent. The density required to transmit energy at the speed of light makes the vacuum of space millions of times stiffer and denser than steel. By substituting a physical density for an abstract constant, the framework entirely eliminates standard electrostatics. Electric fields are replaced by fluid dynamics operating mechanically through the orifices of torus particles. When two of these toroidal particles sit in close proximity, they interact by merging their internal cycles into a shared, continuous flow of ether. All macroscopic forces, whether we observe them as electric, magnetic, or gravitational, are strictly the physical result of shared energy flows and density gradients pulling across the lattice. There is no wave-parv-Paltualevi to reconcile. Particles are constructed from the very space they inhabit. What emerges is a fully hydrodynamic universe, an infinitely extending lattice where energy, mass, and force are unified by the mechanics of fluid pressure. While a rigid infinite ether exists entirely outside accepted scientific consensus, analyzing its structure provides an exacting lesson in theoretical architecture. This framework demonstrates that the behavior of the entire universe can be modeled as a single, dense substance, where the vacuum is the most substantial structure in existence.